Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Record Drums Online podcast, the podcast where I sit down and chat to session drummers, producers, sound engineers. And in this episode, I had the chance of interviewing Jordan Perlson. So if you don't know, Jordan is an amazing session drummer based in Nashville. And he's one of those guys that can play many different styles. He played for Becca Stevens, Hiromi, Gary Burton, and some of the stuff he plays is quite complex as well. And so he shares a little bit in this episode how he approaches learning new songs, learning a new repertoire. But he also records from home. So we talked about his mic setup and how he likes to record, the plugins he uses, and all this kind of good stuff that I'm sure you want to hear. So without further ado, please, here is the episode with Jordan Perlson. So Jordan, thanks so much for doing this. And first thing first, how are you? How's things?
Things are good. Little bit stressful. Some sickness going through my household right now, but other than that, we're all good. But,
all right. Oh man, that's
it's
just
the typical. You've got a toddler. You've got other kids. It's just people get sick, and it's that time of the year. We don't have to talk about that, but you asked how I was, and that's where my brain is at the moment.
Your brain is at, yeah. Are you in Nashville now, right?
I am in Nashville. Yes,
you're in Nashville. That's great. That's awesome. First thing, I wanted to ask you is how did you start in music? How did you start your journey to become a session drummer? One of the most busy session drummer in Nashville and in the States, and also how did you get into recording drums? This podcast is mainly about recording drums, and I wanted to have your take on how did you get into that field of recording drums?
Yeah, so I got into music really just because I, from a very young age, was very drawn to music. I don't remember a time where it wasn't even long before I started playing, where music wasn't kind of my greatest escape, in every way. So when I was, I think I was 7 or 8, my brother started playing the guitar, and that kind of opened up the door to I can do you can make this music too. You don't just have to listen to Led Zeppelin or Van Halen. You can also try to make the sound yourself too. And so a couple of years later, I started taking drum lessons, and it was kind of off to the races from there. So took lessons and played in tons of bands all throughout my childhood. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, which is in the northeast of the States, and about 100 miles from New York, and went to college, went to Berklee College of Music for drums, and for I was a performance and music business double major, and amazing experience there. I actually just went to PASIC, which, if you're not familiar with that, is the Percussive Arts Society convention.
Yeah. I saw some photos. Did you just recently share those photos from PASIC? Yeah.
Yeah, PASIC was this weekend. We're recording this on a Monday, and PASIC was not. It was last week. I went just on Saturday because that was the only day I could go. But
that's awesome.
But I reconnected with tons of friends, people I haven't seen in forever, who I went to college with, which was super cool.
When did you go to Berklee, if you don't mind me asking? What year?
2000 to 2004.
Okay, yeah. So I joined. I was there 2006, 2009. So I just missed you. Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what. I think everybody's experience there is pretty unique. But I had an amazing time there. I spent a ton of time in studios, but absolutely zero time at the board behind the other side of the glass, except to just listen back to takes. I was just there to practice and learn drums and that sort of thing. And my last year at Berklee was when they started the program. They was probably in full swing by the time you got there, but this shows where we were technologically at the time. But they were gonna make the next incoming class, so 2005. They're gonna make it a requirement that you have a laptop and an M-Box. It was optional in 2004, my last year. So I didn't do it until I did it when I graduated. So I bought a new computer and an M-Box when I was graduating to take with me wallet, because it was a deep discount. It was like, because they knew that if they were making it required, they'd have to give it at a discount, and all that stuff, and you could make it a part of your loans and your grants and things like that. So it was a pretty cool program. I'm assuming they still do something similar, just because it's only become more technologically embedded, or technology has become even more embedded in the program there. But anyway, I showed up to New York, a month after graduating from Berklee with my first generation MacBook Pro, which probably had 2 gigs of RAM and 16 gigs of space and of hard drive space. Yeah. And a PCI slot, all those things, and an M box, and with not really knowing what at all to do with it. And pretty early in my time in New York, I took a lesson with Billy Ward. I'm sure you're not familiar with him. You play with Joan Osborne, and he's a pretty heavy session guy. And the lesson was really great, but one of the things that was really informative about it was in his studio, and that was really the first time I was exposed to a drummer who was miking their drums and sending the information into Pro Tools, and communicating with an artist or a producer remotely, and almost nobody was doing this. At the time, it was as far as I was aware, it was just Billy and Sean Pelton, and their studios were also right next door to each other. Right. So few people were doing this. It's also, recording gear in general has always been prohibitively expensive, but it is getting less and less that way. So you subtract 20 years from right now, it's that much more expensive back then. And anyway, all that to say, I left that lesson with a lot of cool things to think about. One of which was I have an M box, and I've barely taken it out of the box, so I should probably check this out. And I think seems like people are going to be doing this, so I should probably know about it. So I got as far as I kind of could with that, and met some new friends who were deeper into the recording stuff, and they were kind of able to mentor me in terms of what gear to get and things like that, which I think that's a really valuable, having trusted kind of comrades in that effort is really important. They were kind of they were the ones able to tell me things look, don't just buy this cheap thing just because it's cheap. Save a little more money and just buy this, and then you'll never have to buy anything again for at least a decade or more. Sure. Which they were absolutely right about on every single thing they ever advised me on. 100%. So I kind of went from kind of dabbling with the M box to jumping into 8 channels and having a dedicated space to recording drums, probably in 2008 or something like that.
Okay. In New York.
In New York. This is in Brooklyn. Oh, wow. I had a 2-floor apartment, and the bottom floor was in the basement of the building. And that room didn't share any walls with anybody. The only thing it shared was its ceiling, which was my floor upstairs, Okay. So that's why it was actually in a really rough neighborhood at the time. It's a nicer neighborhood now, but it was in a kind of rough neighborhood at the time. But I was I have to have this room, this is perfect for what I need to do. And I made immense amounts of noise in that room for the 9 years I lived there, and learned a lot about recording. I feel so then anyway, I moved to Nashville in 2016, brought all my gear with me, had a few different spaces when I first moved here, and then eventually settled where I am now. And up until that time, I know I'm running through all of this stuff. I'm just kind of giving a quick overview.
That's fine. Go for it. Yeah.
Throughout that whole period, my whole take on recording drums remotely was, I'm not a mixing engineer, and I'm barely an engineer. So why don't I give you the most basic, raw, but well-recorded drums I can? I always felt very confident about the performance. I always felt very confident about the choices I was making musically. But I was but I'm not gonna step one toe past the line of making musical decisions and audio decisions. I'm just gonna let someone else do that, and I'm just gonna give as strong but as raw drum tracks as I can to whoever's going to mix it, and they can make all the decisions. And then I went and did a masterclass with Aaron Sterling, who I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you know exactly who that is. And it was amazing because the first hour, and if you ever have, he offers these master classes from time to time, and I highly recommend it. Partially because
the King Dojo ones, or
I think that's what he calls it. I can't remember. The one I did was pre-COVID. So this was quite a while ago now, but at least the way he did it back then, I don't know if he even still does these things, but the first hours he does it in a studio, and the first hours in the live room with his drums set up and mic'd, and you can ask any question about playing the drums, miking the drums, anything that has to do specifically with the kit and him. It's like any question you want to ask him that in regards to like having a drum set in the room, that's the time to do it. And then in the second hour, you go into the control room and he opens up his laptop with his hard drive and shows you sessions he's done from his studio. And the first thing we all noticed was that these are all highly, and I preface this by saying this is, I don't know what his Instagram presence was like back then. I probably wasn't paying close enough attention. But there's tons of YouTube things now filmed in his studio. The Loughton Audio thing they just put out is beautiful. If you haven't watched that, I highly recommend it. So all this stuff is not a whole lot of news to the internet now, but in case it is to you, or in case this is interesting, that this information, what I'm about to say is obvious now, wasn't obvious to me back then, but he puts, he affects the drums in every single way an engineer would, a mixing engineer would. He gives you the kind of the finished product of the drums, no matter what, and everything from EQ to compression to reverb to delay to everything. And one person asked, like, well, you don't send your clients or the producers like these highly affected multi-tracks, do you? And what he said was so profound. He's like, well, of course I do. Like, how will they know what I'm hearing if I don't send them what I'm hearing? Like, I'm making performance decisions based on audio decisions. If you remove one of those aspects of the formula, one of those variables from the formula doesn't make any sense. I can't just assume they're going to know that I had some delay thing in mind when the delay is not there, but I had the delay thing in mind when I played the part. So what, they're going to wonder why I played the part the way I did, or it's not going to make any sense, And it was like the brightest light bulb I'd ever experienced went off in my head, and I was like, I have to up my game. Like, this is not, this is clearly not. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the full justice, of this process. So. Shortly after,
I think because also like you probably, I was the same. I remember like when I started recording, I was just like, I'm just gonna give the tracks raw, flat, right. and I'll let them do their job, but I realized as well, the more I do this, the more, not everyone is a sound engineer or a mixing engineer, so people don't really hear things the way I expect them to. So sometimes they just like, this is our great, but there is no vibe to it, or there is no color to it, and just
precisely, and referencing other people from like another person from our kind of modern remote recording culture. I think I remember watching one of Jake Reed's podcasts, and he was talking about how, like, if you're not sending something you're psyched to hear, they're not going to be psyched to hear it. So, like, forget about, like, we're all probably pretty protective of our performance. If there's like a mistake or a bad edit or, like a tasteless fill or something, like, you're going to be like, anything that's going to make you cringe, like, you need to fix it. And that extends to the audio aspect of it too now. And you want people to be pumped about it. And if you're not pumped about it, they're not going to be pumped about it. And rolling back the clock many, many decades, someone asked, I remember reading an interview with Steve Jordan, and this is long before remote recording and having your own gear. They were like, how did you go from like just being a drummer to like a producer and he was mixing some records at the time. Like, how did you get into that side of it? And he was really simple for him. He was like, I was just sick of people messing up my sound. Like, I was unhappy with how my drums were turning out in the end. So I figured I might as well learn how to do this. And it's like, if we kind of take a little ownership over the sound of it, the way we take ownership over the performance of it, then it kind of changes your perspective on it. And of course, like, I'm going to call it like it is, engineering and mixing is a lifelong pursuit the way drumming is. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm as good as, even some of the most beginning engineers or mixing engineers. But I think adding that into your toolbox, adding that into something that you can offer in terms of your services and your product is really helpful and really important. And then the side, like the kind of the side benefit of all this stuff that I didn't see coming was I actually love it, and it's super fascinating and stimulating. And I never thought I would dig it, but like, it's like, man, I as much as I want to practice all the time, I also want to practice my audio chops and keep working on that too. And it's like, what a beautiful, you know, what a beautiful thing to add on to our lifelong pursuits. You know what I mean? Like, I personally appreciate that this journey that we're all on is never over. You know, you never wake up one day, you're like, oh, I'm a good enough drummer now. Oh, like, oh, I'm a good enough mixing engineer now. You always have to get better. You always want to get better. So I think it's an honor and like a pleasure to be plagued by these things, because the people that aren't plagued by any of these kinds of things, I think lead less joyous lives than people that are. So I'm happy to be plagued by my terrible drum sounds that I get, so I can make them better, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. No. I think, as you said, like it's never ending journey. Like we keep on learning, and that's the beauty of it. I think, like, as you said, like, there is no end. We just, every single day, I feel like I go to the drums and I'm like, oh, there we go. I didn't know you could place the mic this way. There we go. Let's try it.
Yeah. Or when you go to a session, you know, like I just did a record last week with a really, you know, really great producer in town, and she had an engineer on it. It's funny, who's a really great friend of mine. I've never worked with him as an engineer. He's usually just on the sessions playing guitar, but he ended up engineering the session, and he's a fantastic engineer and a fantastic drummer also. He just is also primarily a guitar player. And you know, he was miking the drums, like just the angle of the mics looked really different to me the way he was doing it. I was like, well, I love the sound on the records that he plays on and he engineers. So I was like I took some pictures because I was like, I want to mess with these angles and these distances, you know, like of course I was like, these are going to sound great. I know it. And I walked into for playback and I was like, yes, these are beautiful. Like, so I need to mess with this now. So, but you know, like 10 years ago, it never would have occurred to me to ever pay attention to it. Maybe more like 15 years ago, but yeah.
Do you feel like there is sort of like a shift in the drumming community towards like recording drums? I don't know, especially watching Instagram these days, which I mean, we can talk about that later, but do you feel like since, I guess, you know, let's say 10 years ago, like, you know, from 10 years ago, have you seen sort of like people just getting interested more into the recording side of it, instead of just like, oh yeah, I'm going to practice paradiddles and technique all day long? And
yeah, like 1000%. I think people are way less interested in paradiddles and technique. And even though there's chops to be found on Instagram, you know, endlessly, those chops are also documented at a fairly high level of audio, usually from somebody's home studio, you know? Yeah. So, and I think getting great sounds and like having not even the coolest gear, but having gear, you know, whether it's just a 57 and a 52 and, you know, or whatever, or the most minimal of the gear to have and a very low level, you know, interface or something, is like, we're in the age of that being cooler and sexier and more exciting than like just throwing the metronome on and like getting the, you know, putting in the reps, you know, which I have plenty of opinions about that. But like, but I also think we're also in this age, kind of like we were talking about earlier in the discussion, it's kind of never been more accessible. The information has never been more accessible, you know, like recording for you know, for people, for younger listeners, like the process of recording audio and learning how to do it and having access to the gear was a completely 100% gate-kept concept. You had to go, like there was no other way to do it other than start as an intern and get coffee for people that do this stuff at a studio that is full of gear that only, you know, that is like a minimum of like $1 million worth of gear in these studios. Like, I mean, like it wasn't until maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, you could figure out cheaper ways to do this. Like the very early days of digital audio workstations and like slightly, but you know, there's even like, you know, you're starting to get into like M-Box territory, but even that wasn't good enough. You know, you're still talking about ADATs. You're still talking about recording to tape and things like that. And while that stuff, you know, but then if you're talking about like real mixing or real boards and real outboard gear, and you know, like it's that, like you talk about expense, it's like a whole other ball game with that. So just to learn how to do it and have access to the gear to practice on it was like an unbelievably difficult, gate to get through. Whereas now it's like, he's like, yeah, there, not everybody has a couple grand sitting around, but for a couple grand, you could have
stuff.
You can get great stuff, and just hop on YouTube or hop on wherever, or ask, or like get together with your buddies and experiment by yourself. And like, you just couldn't do that until recently. So
no.
While I wish people were a little more responsible with their practice time and a little more hungry to do to put in the reps and like, not look for hacks in their playing, to get better, things like that. I love how more accessible recording and audio information and gear have become, because it just wasn't that way for literally forever until a couple decades ago.
Yeah, and I remember even like there was, I guess, probably less expectations as well from sound engineers or mixing engineers from, like, I don't know. Now when I go in the studio, I just make sure that, okay, even if the mic is not placed in a certain way, I'll be like, oh, sorry, shall I adjust this? So, sometimes the mics move, or
sure.
Before I remember, like, just sound engineers would be, okay, so this is my job, this is what I do, and the drummers just play the drums, and that's it. Now I think there is a more like a common ground for both, and just be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to tune the drums in a certain way so that it reflects the pitch of the song, of the Actually, speaking of tuning, I wanted to ask you, if you have like a particular way of tuning your drums, or you just I know some people, they're more scientific about tuning drums. Some people, they're more like, they go on sound and just, they're like, okay, this is what I'm hearing for this. I
am very, very much the latter. I'm like the most unscientific guy when it comes to tuning. I wish I was more scientific, and really funny that you bring that up, because I at PASIC I ran into one of my very, very good friends. If you guys aren't familiar with a drummer named Brian Wolf, he's one of the baddest dudes on the planet. He does like all the Daptone stuff now. Like Homer from Daptone doesn't do a lot of the recording anymore, and like most every record, as far as I understand, coming out of the Daptone labels, Brian playing drums, and he tours with various artists and plays with lots of other people too. He's super, super bad dude, and was like, he's 10 years older than me. So when we were in New York, he no longer lives in New York either. He was kind of my like, I just got to keep this guy in my sights. Like, I'll never catch up to him, but if I can kind of stay behind him and like pick up the gigs he's too busy for, and kind of keep an eye on him and learn from the things he's doing, I bet things will go pretty good. It was kind of he was like one of those guys for me. And he is a master drum tuner. His drums always sound not just beautiful, but very, very intentional. And we were hanging out at the WTS booth, which is I'm sure you've seen it on the internet, but it's the Welch tuning system, where it's like one knob and it's a wire, and the drum tunes from this single knob. And we were both blown away by it, and I could see he was like very conflicted, because he's like a very scientific, very heady dude when it comes to this, and he was just like, so what? I just turn the knob and the drum just sound like, you can just, so he was very conflicted. Where for someone like me, I'm like, cool, like sign me up.
Yeah. It's like, so simple. This is way too simple. I know this too much. I want to do every single leg. Okay.
Exactly. So, I've dabbled with a slightly more scientific approach. Like if basically I have the principles of the scientific approach in the back of my head if I need them, and like if I'm just really struggling with a drum and I can't get it to where I need it to be, I'll take it all the way down to nothing and start bringing it up, all at an even pitch and things like that. But I usually just don't have time to do something like that. Usually I'm, walking into a situation where I'm using somebody else's drums, or my drums are coming from a whole different situation. As I play a lot of different kinds of music, like I'm not really a typical session drummer in the sense of like I don't think any session drummer is playing is a typical session drummer anymore. I don't think anybody is. I think the pie has gotten cut up way too, sliced too many times for any of us to expect to be able to just do one kind of thing and be able to feed ourselves. Which is why we're having this conversation. Now we're all engineers too. That's a perfect example, But so I can rely on the more scientific approach if I need to, but generally I like, I mess with a couple lugs here and there. I'm kind of, listening for how it sounds, for the pitch and how it feels, like how the drum feels to play is really important to me too. Because if the pitch is really good and it sounds good, but it's just responding in a strange way, like I'm not going to be able to give a great performance. So I need to keep that in mind too. But yeah, I wish I had some really like cool scientific knowledge to drop on everybody, but I don't.
I don't think there is. I think I was listening to this interview with Steve Ferroni, and he was like, I just don't know how to tune drums. There is my drum tech. He does it. I have
Exactly.
no clue. And when he does it, sounds great. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even gonna touch what he's just tuned. So yeah.
Exactly. I know that exact sound clip, and I both love that he said that, and I'm also like, damn it, I don't have a tech. Like,
I need someone.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, as you mentioned, also as you said, you played a lot of different styles of music, and I just to go back a little bit. So when you were at Berklee, you were studying jazz mainly, or were you just like, I'm gonna go in and just explore different styles? Because when I went to me, it was like literally a punch in the face. I was playing pop rock when I was in Italy, and then I went there and I was like, wait a minute, what are all these styles?
Right.
And so how was for you, like when you went there, what kind of music did you focus on?
Yeah, I think my approach, my intention, and I think I achieved my intention. I think my intention was to study as much jazz and like Latin music and world music as possible, but play everything. I wasn't very discerning when it came to I shouldn't say discerning. I wasn't very discriminating when it came to ensembles or calf shows. That's like, or recitals, like any opportunity to play really anything, I was down. Like I played in like, cover bands where we played AC/DC, and I played in ensembles where we played odd meter modern jazz, and whatever it was, I was down. But when it came to like private studies and things like that, I think my feeling was like, I'm ever so slightly regretful. There are some teachers I wish I'd taken at least a semester with, that I think they didn't meet that intention that I put out for myself. And now in retrospect, I'm like, maybe that intention wasn't quite right, or maybe that what I was after wasn't quite right. But anyway, all my private teachers were mostly kind of jazz and world music minded, and so that's what in terms of lessons, that's what I focused on. But yeah, I played in all kinds of ensembles and all sorts of bands and things like that.
Nice. Did you ever feel like, I don't know, I always had this thing especially when I was taking private lesson, that if I take a private lesson with this teacher, that means I'm going to be into funk, or I'm going to be into jazz, or and I remember people saying like, yeah, you need your own voice, so you need to choose one style and just go with that. And I don't know, at least for me, I never felt really part of it. But seeing all your work, that all the people you work with, it seems also that you keep your like a broad vision into when it comes to music. You just don't stay stuck with one thing. You're very open pretty much on
I remember we probably, since we were there, we didn't overlap, but we were there at this kind of a similar era. I think it was probably a lot of the same kinds of discussions happening. Discussion being the unique voice versus eclectic, diverse kind of player, and you kind of can only be one or the other, and you got to make a choice. And it wasn't that I was making a conscious choice about anything. I just wanted to play different music. I just really had absolutely no interest, and I still have absolutely no interest in only playing one thing. Like I adore that. I've had these opportunities to play different things, and I love that. Like people kind of tend to discover my playing through all these different, like I had someone come up to me at PASIC, the first moment I walked in, he recognized me. He's like, you played on this big band record with this guy, and I play that music with him. Like he doesn't live where you live, but like you played on that record, and I like copped all this stuff, and I was just thinking like, wow, like I haven't thought about that big band record in forever, but like I was obviously flattered, but I love that, like, in the same, that I can also be recognized or be proud of my work with Adrian Belew, or or with Trevor Hall, or any number of people, or Becca Stevens, and like I like that it's so it's like the widest range I can think of. You know what I mean? Of course, it can go much, much wider. I'm not claiming to be the widest, but as far as my ears are concerned, I'm not, what's the word? How am I, I'm trying to think how to put it. As wide as my ears will allow me to play, I'm able to play. You know
Nice.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's all I really want.
Do you ever feel like, okay, you know what, this is not for me. This is not me. I'm just gonna say no to this project or this this artist. If did it ever happen to you that an artist or someone came to you asking you like, hey man, I think you're the drummer for me, and you're like, not too sure actually.
Usually when I say no to something, it's just because of availability and time. But I will often say no to somebody who's asking me to come back to something if my first time around with them was a little too, like, I don't show up to situations to do my thing. Like, it's not that I can't take criticism or I can't hear, like, that's not quite it. Can you try X? Like, I'm always happy. Like, if you know what you want, tell me what you want. Like, I'm happy to do it. But if it starts to turn into like an incredibly kind of Frankenstein thing where it's Frankenstein full of body parts I never would have attached to this monster, you know, like then like on the second go around, if they want a second go around, I might say like, you know, I don't think I'm the right person for this, or I'm not really available, but you should try so and so. Mostly because like if all I'm going to be doing is kind of like, if I'm chasing my own tail, that's fine. But if I'm chasing the tail of a different dog, like, what am I even doing? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I try to avoid situations like that.
Sure. Yeah. And when it comes to also like learn different sets, because I mean, the first time I encountered, let's say, your playing was during, I saw this video, you were playing with Becca Stevens. And it was, I think, the cover of Frank Ocean. I might be mistaken for the Frank Ocean, Thinking About You. Yeah, that was beautiful, by the way. Awesome play, man. Yeah, and how do you go about, because the stuff you play, the music you play is very intricate and difficult and complicated. And how do you go about just learning sets? Is there a way that you know, that you kind of, I guess you of course you've been doing this for years, but is there like, I don't know, is there like a trick, quote unquote, that you use like to help you when it comes to learning such a hard, complicated music? Right.
Well, in the case of the Becca Stevens band, I say historically because it's a lot different now, but back then, we all lived in Brooklyn. We all did not have families, and it was kind of our main thing for all of us. So when Becca would have a new arrangement or a new song cooking or whatever was going on, God, I don't remember the process of putting together the Frank Ocean tune, but I remember putting together some of the music for Imperfect Animal, and like we would go over to her apartment and set up and like not just play for like 7 or 8 hours, but sometimes play for like 7 or 8 hours on like one section of one song. Wow. So, because we had the time back then, and we had the energy to put into such small details. And so with Becca, it's not really about learning a set, especially back then. It was like we were all a part of putting it all together. So as her guitar part was coming together, and as the harmonies were coming together, I was conceiving of some kind of drum part for those sections. So. I wasn't really learning parts. I was just figuring them out, writing them for myself. But when I have to learn music for other people, I should say I haven't been in too many situations. I might even say I've never been in a situation, which funnily enough, I think I have one coming up in the new year for the first time, where I have to learn every note, all the music note for note. Including fills and including very nuanced things. I've been in pretty much, as drummers, when we have to learn music, it's like the bare minimum is like, well, the groove itself, of course, and where the breaks are, and anything you need to set up to make really clear, and all that. But my approach to learning new music that is already recorded and there for me to learn in its entirety is usually to learn like the kind of skeletal structure of it, and then I like to allow my instincts to do the rest. Like I'll if it's something I don't have time to absorb, through my ears and just commit it to memory. I make a lot of cheat sheets, and I'll just write the groove in and write, ride cymbal here, things like that, just to give myself a guide that way part wise, so at least the artist knows what to expect. And if the artist or the producer or whoever says like we really need this fill, then I'll write the fill in so I don't forget it. But I try to give myself the information I would need that my instincts wouldn't otherwise be able to kind of fill in the moment. And then I like to allow my instincts to fill in the moment, because that makes it sound more musical and exciting and human to me. Sure. But like I said, I there are plenty of situations, especially in Nashville, where the expectation is you will play it's a show. It's not a gig. So you're playing a show. You're playing all of this stuff the same way the other people have played it, and that includes the fills and things like that. And I just haven't been in too many situations like that personally. But when it comes to learning things that way, I might start by, it depends on how intricate it is and how much music there is, but it might start with writing things out. And if I have plenty of time and I enjoy the music, I might just dedicate a half hour to an hour every day and just play along. Play
along, nice. And do you find, like, for example, when you do those shows in Nashville, or let's say you're on tour and you go back to studio time, how do you go from one to the other? Because I guess like a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I'm a studio drummer. And so when they go live, when they have to play live, it's a totally different thing, right? It's just all of a sudden you have to, as you said, you have to put out a show instead of just playing drums, which is probably like the studio vibe. So what's your approach when it comes to switching from one to the other? Yeah,
I think they're not that different to me, mostly because like the logistics are totally different, right? But musically speaking, we're talking about the musical aspect of this, right? Obviously, we all know what the logistical differences are, but at the end of the day, you're there to serve a situation. If you're in a studio musician situation, part of serving the situation is creating a great part for the song, but part of it also is making an artist and or a producer really happy with your work. And being on tour and playing shows still involves making an artist or a producer really, really happy with your work. And I don't really, it doesn't hit me any other way, like we just did a tour with Becca, a very, very short tour a couple months ago. And it's our first band tour in years, because we've all started families, and we all, some of us started families kind of straight out of COVID. So we already had time off because of COVID, and then all these babies came, and, so it's been a really long time since we've done anything as a band. And we didn't rehearse for this. Becca told us which songs of her new record, which is a solo record, she wanted to play, and she told us which songs from the old records she wanted to play, and the bass player and I did as much homework as we could, but and there were times at sound check, and there were times like on our way to the gig the next day, she was like, Jordan, I think you did X, Y, and Z on that one tune, but I think it would work better, that we kind of treated that like a rehearsal. And like if you think about getting notes like that in the car on the way to the gig, on the way to gig number 2, talking about gig number 1, if you think about that, like gig number 1 was take 1 and gig number 2 is take 2, it's really just the same. Like I'm just trying to do a better job and help find the vision of the person whose music we're playing, whether it's spread out over a few days or spread out over a couple takes, in a half an hour, isn't really relevant. Again, that's back to the logistical differences.
Yeah. When going back to takes, as you said, like how do you deal? This is like a problem that a lot of drummers that record remotely, I think they have, like when it comes to, you do one take, right, and then you send your take to the producer, artist, and how do you deal with the waiting of that?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about this. I think one of the big things in the future, because I think remote recording is very much here to stay. Like it got really, really huge during COVID, and like a lot of things, people thought it was going to go away once the world kind of came back online. And then of course it hasn't. It's only gotten more relevant and prevalent. But I think like the question you just asked, the thing we're about to start talking about, is one of those things that like in 20 years, people are going to be like, can you believe we used to just wait around for notes, you know?
Yeah.
So as a parallel discussion to this topic, there's also, I'm sure most people have heard of audio movers and session wire and things like these. These are technologies that exist for you to kind of work remotely but synchronously, right? Like when people say working remotely, they usually think of working asynchronously, and you do your work on your own, you send it in, then they listen on their own and they send their notes in back to you and all that. But session wire and audio movers kind of allow people to hear what you're recording at the quality you're recording it in real time, and you can kind of communicate in real time about it. I'm actually not a huge fan of that unless I'm working with people that are very, very, very experienced. Because then it's like you're kind of trying to interpret and translate in real time, and it's just a little bit harder. And plus, if the person's a little inexperienced that you're working with, sometimes having a little more time to put together a more finished product for them, like we were talking about before, makes it even easier for them to hear where you're headed. Whereas if they just kind of hear a raw in motion take, they're like, no, this isn't it at all. It's like, well, no, yeah, I know it isn't it at all. I haven't quite gotten it there. You got to give me a minute, which is one of the really, really nice things about working remotely. You know, you can present a nearly finished product, whereas like, you know, if you're working in person with not just an artist or a producer, but a whole band of people, you know, you've got a whole band of people throwing ideas out and trying to get their thing right. And if you throw out, hey, at the bridge, why don't we bring it way down and do a big crescendo throughout the whole bridge, you know, and then you can tell only half the room is on board, and, you know, maybe that other half of the room, you know, doesn't really execute it too well because they're not totally on board, and then you don't really hear what the idea is, and then you never really got a fair shot. And you see where I'm going with this. Working remotely, you know, you can give all your ideas a fair shot. The person listening on the other side will hear the full fleshed out idea, and that's a really beautiful aspect of working remotely. But as far as the waiting, you know, circling back around to your original question, I've had to just tell people that you need to give me notes by this time. Some people already understand that, especially with drums, we can't just hold our tones and our sounds for you forever. That if we're going to record other music for other people, that means we have to move mics, we have to change levels, we have to tune drums. And then if you say, this is great, I just want the last chorus to be a little different in this way, it's like, well, you can't have that. You know that
it's gone.
It's gone. You know, it's either this or. So one thing I tell people, I just started a policy, which was, you have to give me notes within 24 hours of my delivery of the take to you. If it comes in after 24 hours, it's an hourly rate after that, because I'm probably going to have to recreate something, and that's way more time consuming than just getting a great take for me. And I don't like doing it either. I'd much rather just get a great take for you and you be happy with it, and like I'm, you know, great with the sounds on the first try, and if you come back to me an hour later, you're like, this was great, but like, you know, can you just, you know, in the double chorus, can you go to the ride halfway through? Like, yeah, no problem. You know, like whatever. But if you say that 2 weeks later, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Means I have to learn the whole thing again and recreate it, because you've been living with it for 2 weeks. So you probably want it to be the same. And I don't want to do that. You don't, you know, so that's why it becomes more expensive. But that's how I deal with that.
Yeah. No. It's great. It's great. And do you normally send like an MP3 of your drums, like, or do you send like let's say like, you know, just solo drums and the full thing?
It depends on the client and what they need. You know, some clients, you know, especially if I say, you need to give me feedback by this time, like we were just talking about, they might say, okay, well, in that case, send me a take. Like when you send me the takes, send them with my track so I can hear, because I'm not going to be at home, but I want to be able to give you feedback really fast. So send it to me with the track. Or some people will, you know, never want it with the track because they want to be able to throw it into their DAW and you know, mess with the mix and hear it that way. So I used to send MP3s. I just send waves now because I feel like all the embedded information helps keep things less confusing. But yeah, I usually just send a solo drum take, and then, you know, they can give notes on that. And once we're good, I bounce all the multi-tracks and send that.
Nice, awesome. Yeah. Do you have? I know this is like a very this is a horrible question. I hate this question.
Lay it on me.
It's just like, there is, every song is different. So we all do it differently. We all mic up the drums differently and just use different drums. But is there like let's say, again, this is very quote unquote standard, or I don't know how to put this, but basically what do you have on your drums in terms of mics at the moment that you normally, or like 80% of the times you use on when you're recording drums?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the apprehension of that question. I almost always use a D112 and a Solomon Low Freak on my kick, especially if I'm doing something kind of like big and punchy and kind of pop rock, that sort of thing. And I also try to have a couple kits set up and mic'd at all times just for different sounds and kind of ease of navigating through projects. So I don't always have all of those mics available. I don't have 2 of those each, so I do different things. But that combination is a mainstay for me. I just got a second 47 Junior with a Warm Audio 47 Junior, so now I have 2, and I've been experimenting with those as overheads, and those have been really fun. I usually use KM69s as overhead, which are 84 clones that Mercenary Audio used to make. A Massachusetts company from back in the day used to make them. They're no longer around, but I've had them for almost 20 years, and they sound awesome. But I use those a lot. I'm trying to think. Do you have like SM57s on the snare? Or? I have a 57 on. So my top snare is usually 57 and a 451 together, and then my bottom snare is usually a Mic Tech PM10. I don't think anybody gets too wild and specific and scientific about their bottom snare situation, but I have a few of those. They're inexpensive. The clip is really great on them, and it just doesn't take up a lot more real estate in an already very busy part of the floor. I just got the Loudon Audio Tom mics, and I've been messing with those.
My favorite. I love them.
I just got them, so I'm just learning about them.
Man, you're gonna have so much fun with those.
But I usually use 421s or the PM10s on the toms.
Okay.
And Oh, and I almost always use Cascade Fatheads as room mics.
Nice.
Which I'm sure most people have encountered those or have them themselves because they're so inexpensive, but they sound great.
They sound great. Yeah, they're amazing. Do you send? So do you send like when you record your drums? Do you send everything like multi-tracks and then they do what they want with it, or like because basically I have this thing. Sometimes I record something and I don't want to use all the mics. I just feel like I don't need all the mics.
Sure. And
they don't as well. But sometimes it happened. They're like, oh man. Why didn't you record that hi-hat? And sometimes you just record something, like a vintage, funk tune, and I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't need it. But did you send everything and then they do whatever they want with it, like all the tracks?
I'm blessed with a whole lot of inputs right now. So usually what I do is I record more than I know I even need. And what I think I need is probably more than they need. You know what I mean? Is how my brain works. So I usually start from ground zero with too much. And then as I get going and get mixing and get something balanced that I think is appropriate, I've already taken out at least 1 or 2 mics of my own. And then if I've taken it out, then I don't send it. Or if it's something really something I've affected in a huge way, and I still don't even use it in the bounce that I send them, I'll still send them that for color if they really want something kind of wild or different to throw on there. If it's somebody I've worked with before and I know they're going to want, like you said, like a hi-hat mic, and I'm not using a hi-hat mic, I'll throw it on. I'll keep it muted in the bounce that I send them, and I will make sure that it sounds good. But then after I make sure that it sounds good, I don't listen to it again because I know I don't want to hear it. I'll send stuff like that. But I think unless they've made it clear they want X, Y, and Z, like kind of going back to the whole treating the audio service and product the way you treat your drumming as a service and a product. Like, man, unless you told me you wanted 4 on the floor in the chorus, I'm not going to just put 4 on the floor in the chorus. Like, if there's something specific you want, you need to tell me. Otherwise, I'm going with my musical instincts, which is what you've hired me for. So if somebody gets bent out of shape about a channel that wasn't recorded and they didn't say that they wanted it initially, I would try to find a very polite way of saying, like, you need to communicate better.
Yeah. Just let me know. Let me know from the start. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, nice. So we normally do this at the end of every episode. I do like a 10 rapid fire question, which, by the way, is never rapid fire. So feel free to expand as much as you want.
Okay. I'm already nervous. I hope I don't get them wrong.
Man. The first question is, it's the hard one. There we go. It's probably the hardest one. Top 3 albums for best drum sound.
Whoa, top 3 albums for best drum sound. Where do we begin with like how we decide what the best is?
So normally, normally I say best drum sound at the moment. So for me, at least, it changes every single day. If I listen to an album,
Fair enough.
Oh my god, this is so just feel free. Like today, what's your
one album which the drum sound always hits me in the face, and I feel like it isn't a record we listen to for the drum sounds, even though it is a drummer we listen to for his sounds a lot, is the Genesis record Duke.
Okay.
So that's the first unless I'm getting my history wrong, which is very, very possible. It's the first Genesis. It's the first in the Genesis history of records where Phil Collins is singing lead. It's the first one where Peter Gabriel has left, and they decide to continue on with Phil singing. Yeah. And there's something about the drums on that record that you simultaneously you somehow feel like you're sitting right next to him. In a giant room. Like the room sound is amazing in there. It's like those were not recorded in a booth. Those were definitely recorded in a room, and like you feel like you're just sitting there while and he's right next to you sweating and like fucking delivering so hard, but there's I can never put my finger on the feeling that it bubbles in me whenever I listen to it. Like it's the drums sound so live and present. Like I feel like I'm sitting right there next to him is the only way I can describe it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I need to revisit it. I remember listening to it like ages ago, and I need to.
Yeah, it's all the great Phil Collins shit. It's like definitely concert toms. And it's a big punchy bass drum, and all the stuff we love about Phil Collins. But yeah, there's something about the sound of that the drums on that record that I really, really love. What else is on my mind lately? God, I'm so bad at thinking on my feet in these situations.
No, I know. I was telling you, this is a horrible question.
If something else, let's keep going, and if something pops,
let's keep going. Let's keep going.
I'm sure something will dawn on me. Hopefully before we hang up, and then I can add that
sure.
in.
No worries. We can even have just one. It's fine. So 2 is favorite part of your job.
Favorite part of my job, I think it's of course, like just playing drums is amazing. I think we can all we as professionals we can very easily lose sight of how grateful we can and should feel to get to play drums every day, and I'm certainly guilty of that. But I think I'm really grateful for the relationships. The best part of my job is the relationships I get to have with people, because like my wife works in the corporate world and she has nice relationships with her colleagues, and a lot of them are really great people. But like just going to PASIC and reconnecting with people and like feeling like things. Like 20 years haven't passed since the last time I saw somebody, is really incredible and unique, and something that musicians probably do take for granted unless you have people in your life that don't have those things. And liking the people you work with, no matter what you do, is the most important thing in the world. Like I've never been like a sanitary person, like a trash man or something, but I have to assume that if you love the people on your crew, if you're a trash person, like it makes that job a lot more palatable than like an office job where you hate everybody in your office, And luckily, I think what tends to happen in the music industry is the longer you're able to hold out, because this is a hard, this is a tough job and a tough industry, for everybody who does it. So it's not sustainable for a lot of people. So, to quote a good friend of mine, he was like, "This is a last man standing industry." It's like however long you can make it work, like you're in, like there would be less of your peers constantly as you go. Not just because, now I'm getting to the age where people are going to start literally, dying, but just choosing other industries, choosing other directions, and the longer you do it, the less idiots you run into, because people don't want to work with idiots, so they get called less, and then they fall by the wayside, So like, I think when I was younger and first starting out, I was like encountering a lot of really challenging personalities, and I feel like I don't encounter challenging personalities nearly as much now. Maybe I'm a more patient person now, but I think it's mostly the first thing. I think it's just like the challenging people challenged themselves out of their job.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, that's cool. Number 3 is worst part of your job.
Oh, where do we begin? No, we should be grateful. And now I'm complaining a moment later. Worst part of my job. I hate that we kind of on a daily basis have to validate our value. It's rare as freelance musicians that, even people who want to pay you a fair wage still have to ask you, what do you charge for this? And that's always a hard conversation. You have to get better at and more comfortable with having those conversations. But and in Nashville, for better or for worse, while Tennessee is a right to work state, you don't have to be in the union. A lot of the recording that is done here is done by the rates set by the union, which is helpful because it alleviates that conversation. But in most situations, you have to tell people, some amount, and in a lot of those, I won't say most because everybody's experience is different, but in a lot of those situations, it's less. It's more than they want to pay. And so then you have to then begin the conversation of validating your value, which is just, it's a bummer to have to do it. Like I just got offered a nice tour with a pretty well-known artist. And when the money thing came up, which of course I had to like kind of hound them a little bit about it. Like they'd sent me the dates and, I was like, yeah, but I still don't know what I'm getting paid. It was less than I was expecting. And I decided to just very politely have a conversation because I really wanted to do it. And, I said, hey, I was kind of expecting this. I like the music. I've heard great things about the organization. I would love to do it, but I can't do it for less than this. And if you can't do that, it's totally fine. There's no hard feelings, And I think those conversations get easier to have as you get older and the more you have them. But that is like a bummer of a reality for what we do.
No, for sure, yeah. No, oh man, yeah, this is that's good. Number 4 is piece of gear that you cannot do without when recording drums at the moment, and ooh. I guess that excluding sticks.
Sure. I'm assuming you want to know about some kind of like audio gear or something, or even drum gear. But,
yeah. If there is like one thing that you just you always use.
Yeah. I'm gonna give 2 because one is a really great suggestion for everybody and easy to grab, and the other one is a little more off the beaten path just conceptually. But I have this creative percussion. I think they call it the marshmallow beater. It's a bass drum beater.
Okay.
It's really big and it's soft, but it's not like the jazz bomber beaters that everybody
the
has.
One.
It's not fluffy, but it's soft.
Nice.
And God, like that session I was talking about from a week or two ago, where the guy who's also a great drummer was engineering. He was unexcited about the drums at the studio we were recording at, and was asking me to bring some gear. So I brought an extra bass drum, in specific, because he was like, I don't know about this bass drum, but the drums were already set up and they were mic'd, and I was like, it's going to behoove us to just try to get great sounds with what's set up without having to pull things apart. So I kicked the bass drum a little bit, and I was like, yeah, this does sound pretty bad. but it had a DW pedal with the typical DW, hard felt and hard plastic double beater on it. So I pulled that beater off and put the Creative Percussion Marshmallow on it, and I was like, oh, this just sounds like a great bass drum now. And I called the engineer and I was like, man, just real quick, what do you think about this? He was like, oh, he's like, what'd you do to the kick? Did you like tune it differently? And I was like, just tell me how it sounds in the control room, because that's all that matters is what it sounds like in there. And he came right back and he's like, we're good. Bass drum's amazing. Like, moving on. So I bring that thing everywhere I go. I have, I should really have a couple of them because I use it at home. I use it in other studios. So the Creative Percussion Marshmallow beater, they come in a few different sizes. I think I have like the not extra large. I don't know if he calls it standard or larger, but they're great. They're worth every penny. So that's the first thing. And the other thing that I can't do anything drumming wise without is a piece of wax. I put wax on my sticks, and I feel very confident I can make almost any situation work musically with like a drum set that can stand up on its own. Like if the bass drum's sliding and the floor tom is falling over because you can't tighten the legs, but if all that stuff is handled, but the drums are in terrible shape or whatever, as long as I can put wax on the sticks, I'm good. And it's a very specific kind of, it's a weirdly thing to be high maintenance about, but I actually get a little nervous. I don't have any anxiety about playing. I love playing drums. I love most musical situations. But if I go somewhere and someone might ask me to sit in and I have to use someone else's sticks and I can't put wax on sticks, that actually brings a little bit of anxiety to me. It just allows me
because they're too slippery or something.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I took lessons with Joe Morello, and his signature stick with ProMark at the time had a varnish on it that was like a very tacky varnish. And then they had a change of ownership, or I don't know what happened, but they decided to stop putting the varnish on the sticks. And me and another guy at the time had to we can't play these sticks. Like they're too slippery. And the whole point of this technique is to be loose. And we discovered we can just rub wax on the sticks and everything will be fine. And I was like 15 or 16 when I started putting wax on sticks, and I'm almost 44 and I still can't play without wax on sticks.
Yeah. I remember, funny enough, like Larry Finn, I don't know if you remember from Berklee.
Yeah.
He was the first one that showed me that. He was he was putting wax on his sticks, and I was like, wait a minute, what is that? Yeah. He showed me that. I think it was like a Zildjian was making wax for. It was like in one of those like boxes where you have like actually candies, and he was like, "There we go, yeah, just put some more." I was like, "What? It looks like a soap
Amazing.
or something." And it's
right? Yeah. I don't use any of. I'm sure other major companies make them. A couple independent companies make them too now, but I actually just have a specific. It's actually, funnily enough, it's a Shabbat candle that I found in a shop in New York, and I bought like 50 of these little candles, and if I don't lose it, I can make one last forever. Nice. So so the marshmallow beater and some wax to put on my sticks.
Great answer. Nice one. 5 is dream artists you love to record for.
I think there's 2 in the kind of, I would love to record or work with in some capacity Jeff Tweedy. I have friends who are much bigger Wilco fans than I am. I like Wilco a lot, but I just think the kind of like the creativity that Tweedy puts into everything he does, and the kind of like, I just get the feeling that there's kind of no bound. It's like a no bounds situation. It's like whatever's going to make this song speak the most beautifully is what everybody needs to go do. And I'm always so entranced by everything going on in anything that he does, audio wise, performance wise, instrumentally. So it would be him, and then also Dave Holland, the bass player. I've always been just an insane fan of his. He's been like the top of my, like, I'd love to do something with him one day. That would just be, an unreal dream come true.
Yeah. If those guys are listening, there we go. Come on. Give Jordan, call them right now. Come on. Yeah, no, that's
Jeff,
great, man.
Dave, give me a call.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Number 6 is what plugins you normally use on your drum bus, if you have plugins you use. Yeah.
On my master bus, or just in general?
Yeah, normally on the drum bus. So I guess like master bus if you only have drums on the.
Yeah. I really like the UAD Hitsville Master EQ.
Oh,
That's
okay.
it's a really great one. It's just like really, there's a lot of color to it, so you got to be ready for it to like change the sound of whatever you're putting on it. But I love the sound that it yields. I use a couple different API channel strip plugins depending on what instrument it's on, what mic it's on pretty much almost every one of my channels. I love the Manly Voxbox plugin on for snare drums. I don't know if there's a better way to make a snare drum sound amazing than that thing. And I'm trying to think. Also, I feel like these are all very obvious ones, so maybe some of the less obvious ones. I love the Kive or Kive. I don't know how you pronounce it, but the KIIVE, that plugin company.
Oh, okay.
They have a really cool compressor. I think it's called like the XT compressor or something like that. That one sounds really cool. And there's a really cool company called Heaviosity. I think they mostly appeal to like film scores and sound designers, but they have this super badass like distortion plugin called Fury, and it's like I don't know if there's like a cooler distortion plugin than Fury, and it's one of their less expensive plugins. So, and it's all the Black Friday stuff is coming up, so I would definitely keep an eye on if you're looking for something like that.
Sure.
If you're looking for something like that, I would check that out.
Gosh, so much stuff to buy now.
I know. Things have never been cheaper, but there's never been more to get your hands on. So it's probably evens out in the end.
That's true. Number 7 is there like a book, a video tutorial that you would recommend or that you found helpful in learning how to record drums?
I don't think so. I hate that my answer is no to that, because there probably should be. It's not that I'm too good for a book or a video tutorial, that just nothing comes to mind. And yeah, you know what? I like what's her name? Her name is Sarah. I think it's just called Simply Mixes.
Okay, I don't know.
She's all over YouTube. She's I think she's Scottish. She worked for the BBC forever as a main mixing engineer, and I think she recently left and is kind of doing her own thing. Her tutorials, I can't point to a specific one, but her tutorials are awesome. She couldn't be like more simple and direct and less kind of magical about it. It's more just like, I do this because this is the way it sounds and this is what the track needs. I do this now because I did that, and because since I did that, this is what the track needs over here. And it's like it's very to the point and very kind of dry in the way that I need to learn things like this.
Nice.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. 8 is, who's your inspiration when it comes to recording drums? That could be a drummer, could be a sound engineer, producer, anyone really.
Yeah.
If you have one.
I mean, it really depends on the context. Depending on the vibe and how much freedom I have, Jay Bellerose and all the T-Bone Burnett stuff that he has been a part of is like, I think that's all, at the end of the day, all I'd ever love to sound like. If I could sound like, if all the stuff I made could sound like something, it would sound like that. Both from a drum part wise and like from a sonic, soundscape wise. Like I listen to that. I could listen to almost anything he's ever done, not just the T-Bone stuff, but also the Joe Henry stuff. And it's like, this is what drums are supposed to sound like when they're played, and this is what drums are supposed to sound like when they're recorded. Period. End of sentence.
I like it. Nice. 9 is, what's your best advice? What's the best advice you've ever received?
The secret to success is being too stupid to know when to quit.
Oh, wow.
That's a Morello. A Morello quote.
Oh, really?
And it's the truth. Man. It's the truth. The more you just barrel ahead and don't think about your failures, and you learn from your failures, but don't let them get you down, and just like don't even consider quitting. You just keep going, despite your failures and despite your successes. You keep pushing forward. Like, that's how you succeed.
Wow, yeah, wow, man, yeah, Joe Morello, whew,
Yeah.
what a legend.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the best. And last one, yeah, is worst advice you've ever received.
Worst advice I've ever received. Luckily, there hasn't been a lot of bad advice, but and this is kind of counter to the best advice question. When I was getting ready to leave Boston and move to New York, like every single person I told I was moving to New York was nothing but positive. They're like, "Man, it's great. You're going to do so great there. It's going to be awesome." That's that sentiment, which is what you need to hear. No matter what, no matter how ready you think you might be, no matter how ready they think you might be, that's what you need to hear. If you've made a decision, such a big decision, and you're going to make such a leap, you need support for that leap. But I was working with this one singer, and she was like, "Really? You're going to move to New York?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "But you're doing so much stuff here." And I was like, "Yeah, I just want to try to do this much stuff there, I guess," or something like that. And she was like, "Well, what if you don't? Like, what if it doesn't work out?" And I guess this isn't advice. It was more just like casting doubt,
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that obviously not only was she the only one to cast any doubt, but like clearly she was the only one, because this conversation was in 2004, and it was one conversation with one person that probably lasted no more than 60 seconds. And it still sticks in my mind, almost 23 years later. So did I just do the right math? Or 22 years later. So like it was a terrible kind of just moment. Like I said, it wasn't really advice, but that one person casting a little doubt. It's like the equivalent of like one bad comment on YouTube amongst billions of positive comments, and it can ruin your day. It got me. It had me doubting my decision for a moment, and then I remembered. Well, I was like, well, she's not even doing stuff I want to be doing. So why would I give any weight to her words?
To her, yeah.
And but that sticks in my mind as the answer for that question, I suppose.
Nice. Yeah. Is there any advice? Speaking of advice, is there any advice that you would give to the next generation? So like people like young drummers that are listening now to this, then they want to do exactly what you did. What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say so. Some advice. I don't know if you ever interacted when you were at Berklee with a teacher named Hal Crook.
I knew of him, but he wasn't teaching at. I mean, he was teaching at Berklee, but I never. Yeah, you mean the trombone player, right?
The trombone player. He taught ensembles. He was like the improv guru of New England at the time, and I took a lot of ensembles. Every note that I play, he is in every note that I play, regardless of genre, regardless of the situation. He is a part of every note. And one thing he said that was fascinating was there was a guitar player in one ensemble, and he just wasn't playing very well, at least by Hal's standard. And he was like, I'm just going to call this guy Bob. His name wasn't Bob, but he's like, Bob, like, I don't know what's going on, but you don't sound. I don't remember the words he used, but he didn't mince words. He was just kind of like, if you sounded like shit, he was like, wow, you sound like shit. What's going on? And Bob was like, oh, I've been writing a lot, and composing really is my focus, and blah 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 blah. And Hal was just like, man, no matter what you do, if it's composition, if it's teaching or whatever, no one's gonna care about it if you can't play to back it up. So and that's true to a certain extent. If you want to be a music educator and that's your thing, and you can't like play your ass off, I don't know if the whole world will hold it against you, but like being able to play really, really well alongside of these other skills that you also are passionate about is really, really important. If you can only kind of execute, when asked to, but you can also get a great snare drum sound. The snare drum sound is highly devalued by your playing. Whereas like if you can play your ass off, but you can only get like a mediocre snare drum sound, I think people will hold that against you less and they'll they'll think twice about hiring you if you don't play so great, but you get a great snare sound. But they'll think more about hiring if you play great and get a mediocre snare drum sound. So kind of going back to the very beginning of our conversation about, people maybe not being so practice minded and so obsessive about just being great at their instrument maybe anymore, because there's so much to be great at now. Not because people are lazy, just because there's so much to dilute your day with. I would say don't forget about just trying to be great at your instrument, like trying to be like artistically great at your instrument, and not fall back on, well, I also do these other things. It's like, well, that might be okay too, and you still might work and you still might have a career, and I'm not saying that's not going to be your downfall, but like also being just a super bad motherfucker, is
it's the best.
That'll always be valuable. I guess that's what I'm getting. No. That's never going to go out of fashion.
Nice. Oh man, that's a great advice. Absolutely. Yeah. Man, thank you so much. Yeah. So this, I just wanted to, before you go, can you give us like what's the best place for people to find you and find your work and just get in touch if they need drums as well for on their music?
Yeah. My website, jordanperlson.com. It has, I have a newsletter you can sign up for. I have a remote drumming page if you want to hire me for remote drumming. I have a remote coaching page if you'd like some kind of more lesson-oriented stuff. Or if you just want to say what's up, that's awesome too. I want to hear from everybody. And I go through periods where I'm more or less active, but Instagram is also a good place to get in touch and hear what I'm up to. Those two spots.
Nice. Perfect. Hey, Jordan, once again, thank you so much for your time. It was like a super valuable, a great chat. I cannot wait to listen to this again because, there is so much good stuff in this. So
thanks, Chris.
Thanks so much, man. And I wish you a great day, and I'll see you soon. Yeah.
You too.
Nice one.
You too. Yeah.
See you. Thanks.
See
Bye.
Bye.
I mean, this is it's just to end the stream, really.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah. There we go.